Chapter 133. The room chosen for the negotiations is an office on the second floor. It has been cleared save for a long table with 3 seats on each side. Couches adorn the corner for a handful of spectators. To my surprise, I have been asked to attend by Safar as an observer. Our side is represented by Constantine, Safar herself, and a slave. The Natalist Lord acts as Jarek's second and his representative since the old monster is still captive. By pushing for this, Safar effectively made a show of solidarity for the minor faction while disabling a third, possibly discordant voice. The major lords will attend as observers. Although she had to align with them on bottom line and objectives, the control of the negotiation is essentially hers. The expansion faction is represented by Martha of the Lancaster, the pint-sized dark midge, Bertrand, the grudge-bearing monumental twit, and Orpheus, the yet-to-be insulted. I stare at the last man for a very simple reason. He is very, very handsome. Orpheus is the model I would use to paint an angel. Come to think of it, I may just do that. He would be falling, wings afire, impotent rage and grief plain on his delicate features. And he would be naked, of course. I return my attention to the matter at hand. The expansion faction wears luxurious but slightly ill-fitting clothes on account of being caught in armor. If the deal breaks down, they will be allowed to re-equip and return to the jail where they will be given a chance to fight their way out. It is a doomed prospect. They know it. During the battle, Constantine realized that he could not stop Orpheus from freeing Bertrand. The angelic lord had imbibed a significant amount of Fey essence, allowing him to brute force his way through any barrier. Constantine simply allowed him to waste essence on a vain attack and locked down the entire prison afterward. The expansion faction leaders realized that the risk of being caught on our territory at dawn was too much, and proposed a truce. Now, it is up to Safar to turn this truce into a favorable treaty, and quickly, because the omen has come to pass. We have lost contact with remote villages. My warning proved useful and our agents have been instructed to keep an eye out for rumors of mass disappearance. Similarly, the lords take the situation extremely seriously. The problem is that we are stretched extremely thin for now. Between the mortal war paralyzing a great many assets, and the vampire war mobilizing our fighters, we can barely spare a squad or two. The knights have already started to move, but we have received no news from them. Nor could we rely on them to solve everything by themselves. When the talks begin, I am left extremely disappointed. There is no grandstanding, no eloquent declamations. In fact, the 6 barely talk at all. One side proposes and the other demands something in return. If they disagree, they search for acceptable alternatives, otherwise they move on for now. I can tell that Safar is being very aggressive while Bertrand is, for once, measured and accommodating. Not that he has much of a choice. The discussion lasts long into the night despite the total lack of emotion displayed. There are long periods of silence during which no one moves, no one speaks, and not one aura flickers. Both sides communicate by gestures they hide from their counterparts. I find the whole thing extremely tedious. A slave only intervenes when it comes to the Natalist land. They are to be returned in their entirety in exchange for safe passage. Bertrand categorically refuses to leave the American continent. The two sides finally agree on a line ranging east-west from Monterey all the way to La Paz in the Pacific Ocean as a border. It helps that the French force, under mask impulse, still has to conquer most of the country including Mexico City. Back and forth the arguments go, using money and other treasures to grease the gears of diplomacy. I regret joining long before the discussion is over. I hate it, every aspect of it. We have won, and still we must make concessions to guarantee a long-lasting peace. I wish we could just all crush them. But I am too weak, and only have myself to blame for my lack of power. Even my presence is already a favor rather than a necessity. Dawn approaches when the final document is signed. The expansion faction is allowed to spread its influence in Mexico, while we retain control of the rest. If we had created permanent holds there before the war, we could have leveraged their existence. Once more, our main problem is only made more manifest by this treaty. There are too few of us. We do not even have the numbers to satisfactorily control the Mexican capital. We cannot spread indefinitely either, since a lone vampire remains vulnerable to a determined assault. You focus too much on the negative. So far informs me as we move to our personal quarters, the Accords now have an existence in the eyes of our world. Before, it was merely a figurehead, an agora used to solve grievances peacefully. Now, we are a government recognized by all, a new player. The loss of the Mexican South is meaningless because we never controlled it. Our opponents are merely filling a vacuum. Rather than clinging on something we cannot control anyway, we obtain several significant political and diplomatic prizes. They will attack us again. Yes, in 50 years, when we have consolidated our position and they have something to lose besides reputation. Let us find what the disappearances are about while we are in peace instead of having to endure years of costly skirmishes. The expansion faction is not the only opportunistic predator we have to fear. I suppose. The agreement leaves a bitter taste on my tongue. We placed the entire expansion faction in checkmate. We should be sending them home by boat with a spike up the nether regions, and they should thank us for letting them live. Instead, we have to tolerate their despicable presence on our southern doorstep out of fear that the war might escalate and we start going after each other's mortals. The moment I become a lady, I am gathering an army and leading it to throw every last one of those pricks into the Atlantic, with their heads in separate garbage bins. I really hope that the Vampire Knights can help me with that. Jimena said that she would make some inquiries. I merely have to wait. June 18, 1862. 2 weeks later. 4 riders thunder down the path south as the moon rises over Virginia's valleys and hills. Through forest and field we trot. Yes, trot. The thunder comes from Jarek's humongous nightmare. I stare at the imposing back of our fearless leader. A custom-made Union uniform, that of first lieutenant of the cavalry, strains over his massive shoulders. I notice that they are quite tense. Behind us, 2 mortals ride at a respectable distance also in Union uniforms. I wear a pale blue light traveling dress with a soft cotton cloak plus hood, so that I can hide my features. And gloves. And guns, but I always have a gun somewhere. The forward base is just ahead. Sheridan whispers, I sincerely hope that our documents will be enough. I cannot comprehend how he could spend so much time with me and still approach such situations with anxiety. I could wave the music sheet of a raunchy song under the nose of a group of sentries and convince them that it is a presidential decree. And that I am, in fact, the Princess of Wales. Here to visit my lover. I believe that some stubborn remnant of obedience prevents him from ever being at ease during a deception. By the Watcher, how is he such a straight arrow? We have engaged in piracy. Goodness me. Some people never grow up. The last member of our expedition is Cedric Birmingham, shield mage extraordinary and representative of the White Cabal in this endeavor. His presence does not help with Jarek's mood. We slow down as sentries hail us down, and wait as Jarek convinces the thin mustachioed man in an open vest and kepi to let us through. The poor sergeant takes one look at Jarek's face and decides to look elsewhere, mostly at the folded paper he was sullenly given. A helpful private comes bearing a lantern. The shy light allows them to take in the full appearance of their visitor. Once more, they decide it preferable to avert their eyes. They find me. A woman? The sergeant asks. Private. Jarek's voice is low, rumbling, and usually warm, but now it holds an undercurrent of threat that they cannot miss. Silence ensues. You can read, yes? The living earthquake continues. A nod. What is the word at the very top of the sheet I just gave you? Confidential, sir. Right. No more questions. You may pass. We move on. The sentries guard a road between 2 forested hills, and we continue through to an open plain entirely covered by a camp as massive as a proper city. I have to stop for a moment to imprint that image in my mind. Rows upon rows of white tents lined up in tight ranks. Most of the cooking is done for the night, but the smell of stew remains strong in the air, as well as that of sweat and human refuse. The camp is well ordered and the soldiers serene, as if the bloodshed to come could not affect them. Many are young, I notice, and have this green air that I associate with recruits. To think that 10 years ago, the army had 15,000 men. Now, hundreds of thousands serve under their respective flags, an entire generation rush to the slaughter under officers as clueless as themselves. They watch us pass with curiosity. The camp lives. I hear violins in the distance, and on an open field, soldiers play a strange game with bats and bases and the thrown ball. I think that my fellow Illinois soldiers might be somewhere around here. It takes us several minutes to reach the other end of the massive encampment, during which we are observed but not hailed. The uniform of an officer certainly helps, but not as much as Jarek's annoyed sneer. Then we are across, and through the risky land separating the Union force from Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. Nothing has changed in the landscape, but the tension is now palpable. We tread contested land. Ariane, could you not also wear a uniform to avoid questions? Cedric asks innocently enough. I could not be prevailed upon to don male garments, I lie haughtily. My retort shuts him up. She is too shapely to pass for a man, Sheridan whispers to his neighbor a little bit later. Sheridan, I will cut off your cigar supply. I threaten without turning. In the distance, an owl kills something small and furry. Should we not change into Confederate garb? Cedric finally asks as we do not slow down. No need, Jarek growls, we will use stealth. Observe. A few miles off, I taste the waiting auras of a few mortals and smell their nervousness on the air. Jarek must have done so as well. We slow down, but do not stop. A single old man in a Confederate officer uniform stands proudly across our path on a bay mount. He tips his chin back as we approach, lush white beard on display. I love watching reactions to Jarek when he does not soften the blow of his presence with charm. The gaze of the moon gives even mortals a good visibility, and the one facing us bears a torch as well. There will be no hiding it this time. It starts with a glare, because we wear hostile uniforms, then a frown as his mind registers that his depth perception might be playing tricks on him, then to a stunned look when Jarek comes close enough and he realizes the sheer absurdity of the Natalist Lord's measurements. Above his nightmare, he towers over his lessers by at least half again their size. A colossus. A monster. Then Jarek stops by his side and the physicality of his presence awakens the most primitive, ancestral part of the person's brain. Jarek has no use for hidden threats or sheathed fangs. He is not a creature of the ballroom, like most of us. His nature is plain to see, and the officer realizes it now. Jarek looms. He is quite proficient at looming. As the distance between the two men shortens, the human lians back and the vampire simply exists around and above his counterpart, seemingly covering the dry stature of the underfed fighter in a massive, muscular embrace. Jarek's voice resounds once more, as ineluctable and gravelly as a landslide. You and your 15 friends hidden on the side of the road have two choices. You can choose to have seen us. Or you can choose to let us go. I swear to you that we are not here to harm your interests. I also swear that, should you fight, I will kill every last one of you and wear your innards as garlands across my chest. So, what will it be? I will give the officer credit. He manages to remain upright. It takes him a few seconds to formulate a response, but when he does, his voice is almost clear. A respectable attempt. Well, that is a rather unchivalrous offer, he says. In answer, Jarek pulls back and grabs for the weapon hanging from his thin saddle, a giant battle axe. He waves the titanic implement before his interlocutor's sweaty brow. I don't know about chivalrous, but I can do medieval. Oh please. I think we can let him go, sir. I think he's telling the truth. Oh, and they have a lady with them, a voice bleats from the side as the officer attempts to keep control of his mount, who caught a whiff of something predatory. The pale man grabs on that excuse like a drowning man to a buoy. Well, if they are escorting a lady, clearly, I can let them through. Yes. You are clear to go. Let it not be known that the rigors of war would find our gentlemanly honor wanting. We ride forth unimpeded. So, vampire stealth. Huh? Cedric comments. When Jarek was freed, He returned to his land and found it methodically looted, up to the grain he needed to seed his fields. Most of it was recovered as part of the peace settlement, but the sting on his pride has not let out. It shows in the way he handles the current affairs. His people have requested him to leave so that they could focus on repairs while he brooded his annoyance away. I do not mind Jarek's presence, or his short temper. The ancient Nautilus has not crossed the line yet between curtness and indiscriminate violence, at least not with our allies. He was the most vocal in support of the continuation of war. The invasion of his home still blazes in his heart with righteous fury, but he has remained faithful to our organization. For this, I will tolerate his small hissy fit. He is a sweetheart. At least according to vampire standards. Also, we fought side by side in battle and he sacrificed himself to allow me to escape, so I would unleash all the guns in Illinois if he only asked. No need to tell him, or he might be tempted. The mood is more subdued as the night goes on and we follow a complex set of directions to our target. On one occasion, we stop to ask our way to a pair of Southern soldiers leaning lazily under a lantern. They very politely inform us that, yes, we are on the right track. They even wish us a prompt journey. I told you that this was the right direction, I hiss. It cost us nothing to confirm it, Jarek retorts. We arrive on the outskirts of Dodgetown a little bit after midnight. Dodgetown was unimaginatively named after its founder, like many other hamlets across the country. It barely qualifies as a town to begin with. We decided to come after a report was intercepted that the town had been evacuated. This information was recovered by one of our agents and immediately dismissed as minor by the local authorities. I find the lack of seriousness of the scouts frankly unacceptable. Indeed, the truth becomes manifest as soon as we arrive. The forested path opens into a humble valley nestled between several low hills, with a small river snaking its way between patches of statuesque stalks loaded with berries. Flowers in rainbow shades adorn squares of ripening wheat, the golden treasure a boon to the surrounding soldiers. Or at least they would be, if there was anyone left to harvest them. The serenity here is a lie. It wields the color of nature like a torn skin to pass for tranquility, when in truth, it is the silence of the grave. The stench of death and old blood saturates the air, as well as another one, bitter and defiled, that sets my teeth on edge. By the eye. No. Jarek? No. I may be mistaken. Let us continue, but be vigilant. Then to the mortals. If I tell you to run, you gallop away. Is that clear? The two know better than to object. We ride on and it soon becomes obvious that whoever reported on an evacuation was either blind or a complete idiot. We pass a one-story farmstead with its door kept open. Farming implements and a stove can be seen from the road, as well as the remnants of smashed ceramics. No one in their right mind would have left their houses unlocked and messy, not unless they left in a second. I do not believe that they managed it. We dismount and walk in. I cross the threshold without difficulty, confirming my hypothesis. Its previous occupants have died to the last child. Claw marks. Here, Sheridan says. I turn and see rips in the door frame. Too small to be a werewolf, too strong to be a human, Cedric notes. He is right. A transformed werewolf would have ripped off the entire beam. The remnants of aura are wrong as well. Werewolves are cursed, but they do not feel as tainted as that. Jarek stands silent before a spot of blood. There is surprisingly little of it on the ground considering how heavy the smell hangs in the air. The precious liquid is pinkish and wrong. Deeply wrong. It stinks. By the Watcher, what is that thing? Disaster. Absolute disaster. I thought the vile bloods extinct since the 14th century. How could they still be alive, here? This makes no sense. Unless those insane cockroaches unleashed them as vengeance. But no. They're too greedy to be this stupid. Jarek, I find your behavior concerning. My behavior is the least concerning thing tonight. You do not know. You cannot know. We believed that we had rid the world of this evil forever. Our opponents, our opposites. The locust to our lion. The blood-starved hive. The vile bloods. I must see it with my own eyes. Come on, we must find tracks. There is nothing left in this village. I follow him outside without understanding. The two mortals come along as well, although they are subdued before his darkening spirits. We mount and circle around the ghost town, inspect its empty arterial roads and gutted houses. We find nothing. Or rather, we find too much. Too many scrambled tracks. They could be anywhere, whatever they are. We need to make a bigger circle, Cedric says. No, wait, I reply. Something tugs at my soul once more. It calls to me like back in Boston when the tide of death overran the map. That way. Cedric frowns. Are you? We go. Now. Jarek roars. The urgency has spread to all of us now, and we trot at a good pace through what amounts to little more than a forest track. The land is dark, our allies blind, but we do not stop and neither do they. We soon burst into a deserted clearing around a lone stone. Nothing seems out of place save for the diseased appearance of some of the vegetation, yet I can feel a deep unease, a discordance of sorts. The fabric is so thin here. Something has disturbed this world, Cedric comments, now fully aware of the wrongness. Even Sheridan frowns. We must press on, Jarek says. And we do. I smell it first. More blood in the air. We must hurry, I mutter. No. Jarek interrupts. No, we cannot risk the mortals laming their horses. Not now. They will have to run hard soon. Let them keep their strength, we are too late anyway. And we are. We arrive at the edge of the next hamlet to find devastation. In the previous village, the slaughter was cold. Here, it is fresh and leaking. A single house has caught on fire, possibly due to a fallen lantern. The blaze rises high into the sky and hides the heaven under a cloak of soot and embers. Only the red light remains, and it shines over savaged bodies drowning in their own blood. Men, women, children. They lie where they have fallen in torn heaps, still clutching gaping wounds with rigid fingers. A kettle of some sort must have been caught in the open, or so I assume. Only a single bell and frayed pieces of hide bear witness to the feast that occurred. The air is thick with terror. Jarek stops Cedric as he dismounts. No. Stay on your horse, ready your weapons, and whatever you do, do not get hit. I know what we will find, but I need to swear seeing it with my own eyes when the Council of Wardens asks me. Stay close. Will you finally tell us what those vile bloods are? I hiss. You will see for yourself. Keep them off your nightmare. I grumble. All those ominous declarations tire me. We are the apex. And those. Whatever they are, their stench upsets me. We cross an orchard and reach the main road, well lit by the flames. We leave that way on my command, Jarek orders. The street is thick with bodies. 20 paces before us, a woman gasps her last breaths, bloody hands clutching the ruin of her abdomen. She sees us and gurgles a few unintelligible words through the haze of pain. I'm going, Cedric says. You are not. You will sit on your saddle and watch, Jarek says. But. And when you are done, you will report what you saw to your precious white cabal. The shield mage returns his gaze to the dying villager. It does not take a doctor to realize that she is beyond help. She convulses a few more times, then her back arches despite her wounds, and she falls back. And keeps moving. It starts as a tremor. Then her muscles cramp and creak with such shattering intensity that her bones break. Her spilled blood inexplicably runs back to her vein. Ridges appear on her skull as hair falls in clumps, and ivory shards erupt from her bleeding fingertips. All around her, other bodies join in the macabre transformation. The corpses are turning to monsters at a speed that I would never have believed possible if I had not been here in person. Everything I know about magic and transformation, all that I have studied, even my own experience and Dalton's murderer's fate at the hand of the Key of Barrier, all agree that what I see is an impossibility. Such speed cannot be achieved in our native realm. And yet, with one last sickening crack, the thing that used to be a woman stands up on spindly, spiked limbs. Two dark orbs land squarely on us. There are no iris, no pupils. And the inky void of what this creature represents. I understand it now. The all-devouring hunger. We are shepherds of this world, in a way. We live and die around humans. The wise among us invest and build, but not that thing. They know it, too, is a stranger, but one that lacks ego. It exists to consume and move on. It is vile and defiled and it does not belong. The thing shrieks. It calls with a high-pitched trill that finds answers around us. All around us. About face. Cedric, take point. Don't stop for anything. Go. Go. The mortal's horses do not need to be asked twice. They neigh and gallop as fast as they can. The shrill calls spur on a mad dash. Pale, shambling shapes surge from the nearby bushes. Some are the size of buffaloes. What the fuck? Sheridan says. I share in his opinion. The jaws of the ambush close around us, but we are not some harmless farmers. Shield. Cedric forms a transparent wedge that throws aside the first opponents as they rush him. Meanwhile, Sheridan and I unload into the creatures assaulting our flanks. I watch, mesmerized, as one of the creatures still crawls forward in a demented gait with half of its chest missing. He, Rose slashes above and across a creature's chest on Sheridan's side, sending two mangled pieces careening on the ground. I can barely absorb the essence I gain. All I taste is the shadow of a fading entity that thrashes and bites in its death throes, the remnant of something great. The creature I killed is but a tiny part of a distant whole. Take it, I tell Sheridan, handing him my revolver. I shall wield spells and blades from now on. Behind us, Jarek covers our retreat. Some of the larger specimens can catch up to the humans' tired horses, and he keeps them off our backs. Flay. More creatures die. Some, we leave behind as they trail vestigial organs from mortal wounds in their eagerness to kill us. I successfully manage to cover Sheridan while he reloads. As for Cedric, he holds the shield stably for the few minutes it takes us to plow through the entrapment. The forest slows our pursuers down. Eventually, they give up. We only slow down after we have returned to the first empty hamlet. The extent of the devastation and lost life becomes more obvious as I start counting houses and assess how many lives were lost, then turned. I think that now is a good time for explanation, I inform Jarek. Politely. We wait in silence for the Natalist Lord to speak. He looks worried for the first time since I have met him. Even the inevitability of his capture did not provoke such a strong reaction. Eventually, his gaze lowers to the three of us in turn. Children, all of you. Ah, but it matters not. I was a child as well. Where should I start? Yes. Half a millennium ago, a third of the world's human population died in the span of 5 years. I stand, flabbergasted. What? But Jarek only scoffs. Children indeed. This event was well recorded. We call it the Black Death, the mother of all plagues. It was not caused by the vile bloods, but it lured them in. The suffering and agony of 100 million humans brought the hive to our realm. They are one among many. Shadows, I whisper. Jarek nods. Indeed. We fought the hive for over 30 years. 30 long years of attrition and carnage. 30 years cowering by day with our mortals in impregnable fortresses of stones, watching them die of disease. 30 years of red nights and ceaseless slaughter. Poland was our battlefield, and we only found out about the hive because we lost the Dverlords dwelling there. You see, the problem is not just their savagery, or the way they reproduce. The problem is their intellect. What? Intellect? But those things were cunning enough to ambush us, to wait until we were close enough before rushing in from all sides. A lone vile blood presents little danger to a vampire, but 100 lays traps, 1,000 plan battles, and 10 times that number plan a war. To this day, I am not quite sure why they tried to extinguish us instead of moving on to the tender heart of Europe. Perhaps it was aggression, or perhaps it was part of some eldritch scheme that we cannot comprehend. The few of us who tasted their essence figured out their true nature. As Ariane put it, they're shadows. Imprints of something alien and unfathomable. The more vessels there are, the more the mind can bleed into the torrent of flesh that heralds its coming. So, we need to prevent them from reaching a tipping point, Sheridan observes. And there lies the problem. They will be cunning enough to avoid armies and large towns until they are ready. By that time, it will be too late. The chaos of war only helps them in this task. No one will bat an eye at losing communication with the frontier, especially along the border. I will warn the council. You, Ariane, will go to Washington. You want me to warn Sapphire? I ask with a raised brow. I can contact her from here just fine. No. Not her. The humans. We all recoil in shock at this preposterous proposal. Talk with the human authorities? What madness is this? We have no choice. I will ask for the council's approval, but you must go there. I close my eyes in annoyance, smooth my long skirt and reclaim my revolver from a confused Sheridan. What are you doing? Jarek asks, surprised. If I don't want to charm the entire Congress, I shall need solid proof. I will be right back. 10 minutes later. Do not kill that thing, Ariane. Do not kill that thing, Ariane. Do not kill that thing or you will have to fetch another one. Jarek watches me as I drag a smaller drone behind me. It stopped screeching after I damaged its throat a bit. I hold it by the neck so that it fails to attack me. Apparently, the creature's suicidal tendencies do not extend to snapping its own joints. Good to know. Ariane. What, in the name of the eye, are you doing? Yes, far from me to criticize or anything. Cedric adds. I already told you louts, I reply with undisguised annoyance. If I want to convince anyone that a wave of horrible magical locusts is descending upon us without being thrown in the loony bin, I will need irrefutable proof. Even a dead thing could arguably be the work of a gifted taxidermist. This claim becomes more difficult to sustain when said thing is desperately trying to claw your face off. Jarek, would you kindly help me bind it? Much obliged. We easily find ropes in a nearby warehouse. The main problem is that we will not be able to carry the drone around on a leash. I need to build a cage. A container of sorts. I say. We look around and find no such a thing. Unsurprisingly, since the average Virginian muddle rarely keeps bears around for entertainment purposes. I do find nails and solid planks. I decide to put my advanced engineering skills to build a crate. There is a joke in here somewhere. Cedric stares at me as I dry-fit planks together to form a solid base. We are going to need something sturdy. Should you not be standing guard? I finally snap at the man looking over my shoulder. Sorry, it's not every day that I see a vampire master doing manual labor. If you could waggle a hammer as easily as that tongue of yours, we could have avoided that situation entirely. Jesus, woman. All right, I'm going. The alliance against the end of the world is off to a great start. Chapter 134. Upon our return, Jarek's plan to boot the door to the presidential office open and dump the hive drone on Lincoln's desk is short-lived. Sapphire imposes her veto and Jarek's complaints fall on deaf ears. We will disseminate this information in due time. I give you my word, Jarek. The Council of Wardens must hear of it first, or just imagine how those old lords will react to being told of this momentous event after the mortals. Right? Right. And so we ship ourselves north to Boston for an emergency session. Boston, June 17, 1862. The council chambers are nowhere close to full, as many domains are still reorganizing following the departure of the expansion faction. Time was simply too short. We still count at least one representative per seat of power, and I can tell the tension from the postures of the vampires present. It takes an experienced eye to notice concern in a creature with no pulse, no facial expression, and aura control developed as a survival tool. As always, the devil is in the details. Gazes that collectively follow the movements of the newcomers. An artful poise just a bit too relaxed. The signs are many, and I have had plenty of experience in the past few years. Constantine enters last and just on time. We go through the opening protocol with some impatience until, finally, Jarek takes the floor. I have never been very good at politics, so I will state it plainly. In the 14th century, We fought a world-ending plague of monstrous creatures that reproduce from human corpses. They killed 100 of us in combat, almost killed the rest, and now they're back. I see shock in the minute widening of eyes. Hands rise up in the air. Are you quite sure? One of the wardens of Maryland asks. On my blood I so swear. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. A pack of 50 drones or so, and there are bound to be more. They fought the exact same way. The next to speak is a statuist Roland Master from the Mississippi domain. I have studied our history extensively, but I have never heard of this event. Are you saying that the records were voluntarily erased? Jarek's eyes, a low, rumbling sound like wind through a canyon. He sits heavily in his stone chair and leans forward, hands linked together. Nobody protests at the breach of protocol. The battle took place around the current territory of Poland. We have expunged all mortal records from that time, because our existence had become common knowledge, and it was our wish to disappear again. Vampire records exist, but those of us who were alive at that time have no wish to go over those memories. You have to understand. We thought this was the end of the world. Jarek's eyes grow clouded. We all sense the gravity of the situation, of what led a lord as powerful and unyielding as Jarek to bend under the weight of memories. Hell had come to Earth. The world half a millennium ago was more religious than your own. Younglings have grown jaded towards the Christian beliefs nowadays. You believe in technology and profit. We genuinely believed in the scriptures, though we thought ourselves on the wrong side of them, and to us the time of judgment had come. Pestilence, famine, war, and death rode across the countryside. Humans died in the millions. Millions. You cannot comprehend the extent of the death we were seeing because, to you, this is just an abstract number. You do not understand the mountain of corpses this represents, how many lives were destroyed, how much was lost. You cannot comprehend, and if the eye allows it, you never will. I am dragged into his aura, the naked sorrow and, yes, terror in it. As Jarek speaks, I can hear it in the background. The sobs of disbelief of the survivors who did not understand why they still drew breath, the roars of hordes of drones climbing castle walls day in day out to slaughter every last creature of flesh still moving. The starving humans as no field could be safely tilled. Vampires dying in combat as they were overwhelmed one by one and, behind our foes, that ominous presence that bled in more with each creature adding its mind to the collective. We spent years in battle. We extinguished entire hordes in our blackest of hatred, slaughtering them from dusk to dawn until the ground was kicked with blood and the pyres of the fallen darkened the heavens. We thought the end had come and that they were demons. I almost wished that the trumpets of the apocalypse would sound and that the angels would finally descend to burn all of us, so that it would stop. They did not. We ended the conflict. One summer, we rode across the land bellowing battle cries and nothing answered. It was finished. The end of the tale is received in silence. This all feels surreal to me, as if the gnomes and farfadets of old stories appeared to clean our attics and steal our slippers. Now, I know how mortals feel when they meet us. One of Swaya's lieutenants is the first to react. Is it mask again? Did those idiotas unleash this on us? Jarek frowns. I do not know, but if they are responsible, it must be a rogue. Someone desperate for revenge. Only a madman, or maidwoman, would hate the world so much that they would wish to end it in this manner. I contemplate the possibility. A true rogue would rely too much on instinct to come up with anything more elaborate than go there, kill. Someone who lost their bonded humans would fit the bill. I will summon Mask Ambassador Madrigal after the session has concluded and find out the truth, Constantine says. In the meanwhile, the situation calls for an immediate mobilization of all our means. A few uncharacteristic mutterings spread through the assembly, but the speaker is quick to remind them of the sword of Damocles hanging over our collective necks. I believe that most of you are missing the point. No matter how well we work, the cat is out of the proverbial bag. We are not 14th century Poland. There will be no erasing the records for this. You cannot be serious. Cohorts of journalists from all across the world have come to document the current conflict. Hundreds of printing presses across the continent work tirelessly to spread the news. Right now, there are only rumors and dismissed reports. It will not last. This is it, ladies and gentlemen, the trend of disbelief that has marked the 2 last centuries has come to an end. Magic is coming back into the open, and us with it. No. Impossible. We must not let it come to pass. Silence. Constantine yells, then he settles back down as his order is obeyed. What we have is a cannon with its fuse lit. We cannot control the blast, but we can control the trajectory. We will be working around the clock to bend the narrative of this revelation. We will need the help of every last courtier in this endeavor, so interrupt all training and recall all of your agents. We are going all in. This meeting is adjourned for 2 hours, during which you will be given the opportunity to discuss with your peers. We will decide on how to communicate with the press, the government, and the other magical factions tonight. I will accept no delays. You may leave now. We all stand and move out with more alacrity than ever. I quickly join Safar as she hails me. I must say that your alliance with the White Cabal is a benediction, the lithe Hastings lady comments in hushed tones. I will be relying on you to align with them. But that will come later. I need your help in Washington with me, and with your 2 courtiers if possible. How so? I ask, a bit surprised. I trust only you to be sensible around the Union's topmost military and civilian leaders. Now I know that you have better things to do, but it might be a good experience for you to make contact with a few key generals directly while you have the opportunity. Just, please, do not bite them. And you will need the muscle. No, the representation. Remember, they will look at us and see their first supernatural people. The first impression determines attitude for a long time, and having someone I can depend on will go a long way towards assuaging my concerns and building a long-term relationship with the mortal authorities. I assent, but I will need to leave soon so that I can get the White Cabal on board with the reveal. I have an idea. You do? Safar asks, expectant. I nod. If we can put a positive face on the, shall we say, mystically inclined population, it will go a long way towards making our existence more acceptable. A figurehead. Who did you have in mind? An archmage by the name of Reginald Lewis. He is very handsome and charismatic. More importantly, he has a strong sense of justice and integrity. We will not need to steer him to protect his kind. If he is naive. He is, but he also knows it, and listens to the next black dog candidate. I can think of no better ambassador. Not to mention that the mages will support us and get invested in this project. We already control most mainstream newspapers. We only need to make sure his attractive mug gets printed on enough front pages. Safar considers, then assents. You are coming into your own. Very well, I only need 1 week of your time to get the government on board, then I will support you however I can. Finally, I am showing some initiative. Now, I only need to make sure to bring this project to a satisfactory conclusion, because Safar will be watching. One last thing, I say, have you heard about the drones? Perhaps from your sire. We certainly need all the knowledge we can get. Safar chuckles, a teetering sound that I always found vaguely threatening. You are letting that ancient Rari Jariak twist your perception, Dari. You are from the first bloodline. Mine did not exist in the 14th century. By the eye, even the Lancasters only appeared 100 years later. This is ancient history for most of us. Sometimes, I cannot tell if you are one of us, or one of them. Washington, 4 days later. The antechamber to Safar's offices has been recently refurbished to give off a gentle, old-world charm. I can still smell the acrid stench of drying paint under the more prevalent one of coffee and tobacco. The colors are black, chestnut, and gold, with more attention given to decoration than our Puritan society would normally allow. I have dressed for the occasion, in an embroidered black dress with golden filigree. The daring cut leaves most of my shoulders bare without, thankfully, revealing any cleavage. Apparently it is quite popular with gentlemen. Safar lent me her personal mate to push my hair up in a stylish do, clearing my neck and leading the eye to a beautiful necklace with an engraved ruby. The jewel hosts a powerful shield charm because I will never sacrifice safety in the name of elegance when sufficient preparation will account for both. A knock on the door, and a new visitor enters the room. His brown gaze travels over the many seats, the low tables and the room's 2 occupants. Night fell recently. An urchin stands near a bookshelf on the side opposite me, leafing through a book. Or rather, books. Every time a page turns, he swaps for another one. The transition is seamless enough that only the most perceptive mortals discern the subterfuge. The others only retain a vague feeling of unease, just as Urchin intended. He is, after all, the stick to my carrot. Or the thorn to my... Gah, this is barely better. In any case, the newcomer inspects us all. He wears a Union uniform with quite a few stars, a brown beard and thick dark hair. He possesses a keen gaze that lingers on Urchin's books, and immediately follows my form as I put down my notes and rise to greet him. I curtsy in a traditional manner, keeping my gaze slightly down. "Welcome, sir. Please, sit and make yourself comfortable. Lady Sapphire will be with you in a moment." The soldier slowly takes a cigar from his waist pocket and lights it. The reddening embers shine furiously in the diffuse radiance of gas lamps. I find him quite rude. Most would have asked before stinking up the place. Oh, a test. He is gauging our reactions. I still stand demurely with a light smile. "How did you know what I was here for?" "You were let in," I answer honestly. "We have wards in place for the occasion." A puff of smoke floats forward. The powerful aroma is still fresh, and thus, not entirely unpleasant. "You are one of them, then?" "One of the mystical Americans as Sapphire sold it. She has presented herself as an expert in spirituality. That is, so far, how the handful of key officials see us. She hinted that we can cast spells, but the humans think curses and other inefficient castings. They do not know about the vampires and werewolves, and will not do so until much later." "Yes." "Huh. Are you perhaps disappointed? Were you expecting a few warts and a broad hat?" Another puff of cigar. The soldier's eyes narrow. "What am I waiting for anyway? The creature is in the cellar. We have caged it behind steel and glass for safety, but there is a limited amount of space as a result. Only 7 people are allowed at any time. This measure also serves as a precaution. As you may have heard, the drones reproduce by creating and infecting human corpses. We would not want an outbreak in the center of the capital now, would we? Is it truly under control? It will not get out of its containment without outside assistance." The soldier contemplates my words for a moment. "You know, I have considered taking 100 men and coming here to arrest everyone, then find out if this whole thing was a bizarre farce designed to waste the army's time." Urchin's claws pierce through the leather-covered tome he holds. I frown. "Those are expensive." "You did not," I finally reply, "because you will see the truth for yourself without having to create an uproar." The man takes a few steps forward, blue clouds following him like a veil. "If you were truly witches. We would prefer the more pleasant term, mystic. If you truly are witches, then you could confuse my mind." Tick 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 goes a claw on my coffee cup. "This is our territory. You are a guest here," I remind the visitor with a tight smile. "We will exert every courtesy, and we expect the same in return." My interlocutor sits heavily in front of me, and I also regain my chair. "Very well. Mystique. Answer my question, please. You are a man used to the rigor of battle. You will examine your thoughts and find them clear, even as horror stares you in the eyes. You are also welcome to return here and inspect the creature again at a later date, when you have taken appropriate precautions, I suppose. In fact, we expect this location to see a lot of traffic in the coming days." "What precautions would those be?" He scoffs. "I do not know how to avoid bullets. How could I ward off curses?" "Oh. You were shot at? I thought that generals were not subject to that treatment." The distant rear of an army engaged in battle is not the best place from which to judge correctly what is going on in the front. "I have been shot at, but am pleased to report that I was missed." He considers his next words and reluctantly continues. though I admit that it got pretty close in Shiloh. One of my aides even lost his hat. Shiloh? You were Hiram Ulysses Grant. I clicked my mouth shut. I saw his attention drift to the hint of fangs, which I had carelessly revealed. It would not do to spook one of the few military leaders I respect. I was not aware that you people, no offense, were so interested in mundane affairs. Surely you would jest? I have been doing my best to support the Union since the very beginning. Do you not enjoy the abundant supply of ammunition I provide? Wait. The Eagle. Yes. Illinois Guns of Liberty? That is me. I mean, us. I have tried so hard to make sure that our side was decently provisioned. I must say, you are one of my two favorite generals. And who, pray tell, might be the other? The soldier asks with some measure of bemusement. I have not gained his trust yet. George Henry Thomas. Was he not originally from the South? Yes, I reply, as am I now. Why not tell me how I could help you fill McClellan's shoes? 10 minutes later. Most officers and theorists alike severely overestimate the range during major engagements, I explain excitedly. Yes, hitting reliably at 400 yards is all well and good, but how many people do you think can make that shot anyway? None of the Irish refugees or city dwellers your recruiters grab off the streets, that is for sure. That is why we are considering switching entirely to metal cartridges and a repeater structure. I understand that we are to attack relentlessly and aggressively to achieve victory, woman. Even with your best efforts, our supply trains would not allow us to operate in the South where our supply train struggles to follow. And replacing our entire arsenal would simply be too cost-prohibitive. I do see the appeal of equipping cavalry with repeaters, however. Graham frowns and considers his cigar, which has run its course. I never expected to discuss matters of war with a woman. This has been a disconcerting evening, all in all. Please look at me as one of your chief weapons suppliers. You do not dress like one. He got me there. I did not come here to discuss theory, the soldier continues, but those reports I saw. Tell me, is it true what they say? A horde of monsters? Really? We would never have come to you in the open if the fate of the nation, no, of mankind itself on this land was not at stake. There are no signs of those drones you mentioned in the West. By the time they reach the West, it will be too late. We must stop them before they reach a critical mass, otherwise they will be free to reap the continent and throw armies after armies of creatures at the survivors. It already happened once, and the population density was nowhere close to what it is now. What period of history are we talking about? The 14th century. Grant mushes the butt of his cigar in a conveniently placed ashtray. Men had swords and shields then, we have muskets now. And muskets can punch through a knight's armor, but they do not inflict the kind of catastrophic damage that we need to disable those things. At least not quickly. A mortally wounded drone can keep fighting for 30 seconds. That is a long time in battle. Are you quite sure? I saw it happen. On my blood I so swear. This causes a raised eyebrow. A strange idiom. Nevertheless, I am still not convinced that this is not some form of elaborate prank. Magic and monsters. What world are we living in? Since you asked. I reply, and reveal my fangs this time. You are living in ours now. Safar returns before Grant can detach his eyes from my smile. She is followed by several old men in dark suits. One of them holds a handkerchief to his mouth and looks slightly ill. The smell of terror, sweat, and vomit soon eclipses that of tobacco. John is downstairs to provide a much-needed confidence boost to the witnesses. The sight of another worldly horror still impacts them greatly, and I can understand why. No amount of bars, chains, or pains can lessen the chilling fear of realization that there are many more of those out there. I am genuinely concerned as I see those men stumble away from the receiving room and out into the cobbled streets outside. They may fear the hive more than they fear us for now, but even if we should succeed, there will be a lot of blame going around. The magical population is a ready culprit. I must make our media campaign work. And you must be General Grant. Please, follow me, sir. The drone is this way, Safar says. The two disappear into the depths of the domain. Urchin lets out a chuckle. You are being quite the enthusiast, mistress. I never expected you to look up to a mortal so much. I do not look up, but think about it. He can order tens of thousands of men into battle. Explosions everywhere. Definitely an enthusiast. I see that you are still using your tricks on the book. Would you like to see mine? I bet that I can make your tongue disappear. Urchin lifts his hands in mock surrender. I know that I have not heard the end of this. Avalon, White Cabal main stronghold west of New York, June 27, 1862. This is unacceptable. Who do you think you are to take this sort of decision in your hands? The White Cabal will not tolerate the vampire's tyranny. Archmage Pruitt bellows. The Council of the White Cabal is a majestic amphitheater with the first row composed of 7 wood thrones in a half-circle opposite a pulpit from whence a tired president moderates the debate. My detractors' protests do not elicit the kind of annoyance I expected in my allies. Even the usually caustic Frost appears subdued. This time, the bloodsuckers have gone too far and revealed their true colors. They care not for our alliance except as cannon fodder, and this latest action proves it beyond the shadow of a doubt. I propose a vote that we immediately cease all cooperation with those monsters and finally— Oh, shut up, you do not have the right to call a vote, Hopkins answers. The black dog is older now, with gray hair and a slightly stooped back, but his brown eyes still shine with the rapier-sharp intellect that drove all his decisions and turned the motley refugee group that the White Cabal used to be into a force to be reckoned with. Human spellcasters tend to age more slowly the stronger they are, but Hopkins is completely human. His time is coming. At the very least, his legacy is secured in the person of William Hope, a brilliant tactician. The young lad has really come into his own. He is also married with 3 children to a fellow archmage, Mina Kincaid, so I suppose that I should stop thinking of him as a young lad. Hopkins' interruption would have gone more poorly if voting for an immediate end to our alliance for the sake of mankind yada had not been Cornelius Pruitt's default answer to my presence for the past 20 years. He fails to understand that proposing something 100 times and being rebuffed on every occasion makes him look weak. Werewolves do not have a monopoly over pack mentality. You are all fools. Yes, I have heard it all before. Now, Ariane, Cornelius raises a good point. The decision to come out in the open should not rely on vampires only. He knows exactly what I will answer. This is simply one diplomat passing the baton to the other. You misunderstand. That decision was taken out of our hands the moment the drones appeared in a nation with a relatively high population, reporters, and printing presses. Our own council had to face the same decision as you do now, and we have reached the conclusion that the existence of real magic, not as a superstition, but as a scientifically demonstrable fact, will necessarily reach the public within the next 3 months. Pandora's box has been opened, ladies and gentlemen. We can no more contain it than we can stop the tide. Our only hope to avoid persecution now lies in presenting a united, positive front to the general public. And I suppose that vampires will handle that? Cornelius sneers. As a matter of fact, I have come to offer the White Cabal the opportunity to take your rightful place at the forefront of this revolution. We vampires have means, but we prefer to remain in the background for obvious reasons. As the people closest to mundane humans, it is my belief that mages will present the most positive image to the people, and take the brunt of the attack should the mundane turn on us. Cornelius erupts. This would happen no matter what, I calmly reply. Tisk. What did you have in mind? Frost asks in a slightly broken voice. We have access to many newspapers, and we can use them to present us mystical Americans as fighters on the forefront of this new war. What would help the most would be a fresh face, someone charismatic who would represent us in the population's mind. Someone whose honor and righteousness cannot be denied. And I assume that you had someone in mind? Yes. I believe that Archmage Reginald Lewis would be the ideal candidate. Befuddled mutters soon fill the amphitheater. I take a risk by naming a candidate myself, since he will be looked upon with distrust by my most fervent opponents. I decide that the risk is worth it, First, because Reginald is the perfect figurehead and anyone else would come short, and second, because he is definitely on the edge about working with me. Perhaps I should not have eaten all those enemy casters in front of him during our little outings together. Ah well. In any case, the die is cast. Is there any specific reason why you would choose young Lewis? An old lady with a monocle asks me with some suspicion. She is speaking out of bound, but a quick look at the president tells me that he will let it go. He is handsome and a straight arrow, I reply. Silence spreads across the room. That's it? That's the reason? No lies, Ariane of the Nirari, we know that you vampires have layers upon layers of schemes, she says. I hardly need layers of schemes when handling the hoi polloi. Have you talked with the average person in the street recently? A good-looking square-jawed muscular male Anglo-straight shooter has the best chance of garnering a positive reaction. That is all we need. But we need a lot of it. The assembled mages glare at me with distrust. I know that I got them. Old mages are naturally arrogant and look down upon the normal population. In this regard, we have much in common. A common ground has been found. When you put it like that. And now we are having a conversation instead of a carefully managed political negotiation. I sense the change in the mood and pounce on it. Sine had always mentioned that part of charm is perception rather than influence. The ability to seize the right moment. Look, we will need the mages to represent us and you need our access to money and the press. I was the one who sold the idea of cooperation to the speaker and his lieutenants. The diffusion of magic will lead to a lot of misery for our peoples, even if we manage it properly. This is our one and only chance to seize the initiative and present a united front to shield ourselves against the normal human's wrath. We will strive together or we will suffer alone. I am not asking you to sacrifice anything, I am offering you the opportunity to be one of those who steer the ship. We both stand to win more and lose less by working side by side. It takes a moment for everyone to mull over my words. Archmages, especially the old and crusty ones, regard everything with distrust. I do not expect them to agree on the spot. We would have conditions, the old woman says. Then list them, I offer. You are not seriously considering, oh shove it Cornelius, the moment you start contributing, instead of whining, I will listen to you. We need to discuss this alone, Ariane of the Nirari. Please leave us for the time being. I consent, and am led outside. We have acted quickly and decisively. Now we just have to hope that it will be enough. Chapter 135 September 18, 1862, 3 months after the Accord Council's vote. Madrigal's expression is more solemn than usual. I cannot help but draw a parallel between him and Luther, the Arenwald ambassador I had met during my short stay in the Parisian catacombs. While Luther was haughty and distant, Madrigal adopted a more debonair persona. Different styles, I suppose. The masked envoy still wears his usual long black jacket over white shirt. His dark hair falls around his hawkish face to his jaw. We stand in one of the manor's upper rooms, repurposed from personal quarters to an official reception room to accommodate our increasing administrative needs. Constantine sits on a throne-like chair while a handful of wardens form a small assembly around a long table. A gesture from the speaker, and we all sit down at the same time. Greetings, Madrigal. I assume that you have an answer to our inquiry? That is correct, our guest answers with a mellifluous voice. I have conversed with several members of the masked leadership including Bertrand. The release of the hive scourge on the planet has already been qualified as an unforgivable act that will lead to an automatic death sentence. Bertrand gave me his word that all members of his expedition have sworn an oath to that effect, and that Lady Martha will do the same with her subordinates in Mexico. If the culprit was one of our numbers, rest assured that they will be made an example out of. We are no more tolerant of such reckless behavior than you are. We consider his words in silence. Madrigal used the turn of phrase "give my word," which qualifies as an oath. He has engaged his own essence. Unless a masked leader duped him, which I consider unlikely, he is reporting the truth. More importantly, he has made a candid show of things. Simply put, if Mask had been directly involved, he would have played a blame game, deflected, and resorted to the many other tools in the arsenal of the consummate diplomat. There's also the matter that only a madman would have done such a thing. Madrigal must have perceived the mood, because he resumes his argument. Although we bear no responsibility in this situation, Lady Martha still wishes to extend a hand, as a gesture of reconciliation. She is too far from her power base to assist on a regular basis. By that he means that she is too busy worming her way into the dizzying mess that is current Mexican politics. However, she is willing to participate in a decisive operation, should you need her. I would like to point out that Lady Martha is one of the foremost ritual magic specialists in the world, present company notwithstanding, and that her assistance is highly sought after back in Europe. We appreciate the offer, and I will call upon her when I find a suitable task. Constantine answers a bit testily. If Madrigal is offended by Constantine's words, he does not show it. As we all expected, he has shown the carrot and now takes out the stick. Now that we have cleared the air on this specific matter, there was a concern, if I may, that many of my peers share. The question of going public. I am not surprised that Madrigal would have gleaned enough information to come to that conclusion. We have made no secret of it within our community. Many of us fear that your decision might be hasty, and motivated by expediency rather than sustainability. Or to translate it in common terms, who the fuck do you think you are? How do you scaredy little upstarts dare take decisions on your own? Or something of the sort. The subtlety has not escaped Constantine. We all know that Madrigal's role is also to smooth relations between vampires whose egos could not fit in the Versailles Gallery des Glaces on a good day. The speaker leans forward on his chair and glares at Madrigal. We appreciate our European cousin's insight. In this case, however, I believe that their remoteness hampers their ability to grasp the situation accurately. They may also be underestimating the impact of some of the newer technologies on the spread of information. Or, in less polite terms, they are a bunch of old farts who have no idea what they are talking about. Thinly veiled insults and to-the-point arguments. This is diplomacy, just the way I like it. Surely. Madrigal begins, but the speaker is not done. Multiple reports of monster sightings are transmitted every week by telegraph to Washington and then to the presidential office. Hundreds of journalists have already interviewed survivors from different attacks, all giving consistent testimonies on both sides of the border. Corpses of slain drones are as we speak autopsied and stored in every major center of knowledge of the continent. West Point scholars have already started on a list of countermeasures and adapted combat doctrines. There are even pictures circulating. Public perception has reached a point of no return, Madrigal, and there is nothing we, or anyone, can do about it. The ambassador falls silent, his pleasant facade still in place. The world is changing fast, Madrigal. We can either embrace it or retreat to the dark confines of the world and hope that no one notices us. You seem a bit hesitant, so let me ask you a question. You communicated with your peers via an exhausting communication spell, have you not? That is correct. And I assume that it has been the case since the spell was first invented. Well, you can rejoice. 4 years ago, a telegram was sent directly from Queen Victoria to President James Buchanan. The transatlantic submarine cable that allowed this little exploit has degraded since then, but it will be less than a decade before you can effortlessly send coded messages from your office to Paris in mere minutes. In such a world, there is no future in preventing the flow of information. Our only option is to direct it. I see your point, Speaker. Perhaps you do, Constantine concedes. Perhaps you do, but your peers do not. I know that the consensus overseas is that the war has made us lose our minds. You still have a few months before the first visiting European scholars arrive to inspect specimens, and before the first preserved remains make their way across the ocean. You can still cooperate with one another to take control of the situation, but not for long. Our time is running out. All our time. We will not wait for you. I understand. I shall convey the gravity of the situation to our ruling councils. I do believe that some of us do not quite appreciate exactly how widespread the infestation is. If you need any evidence for your demonstration, feel free to request the help of our media room. We have hundreds of newspaper extracts on the current events that will support my claim. In any case, thank you for answering my inquiry. You may leave now. A little later, I sat across Constantine's desk in his office, now turned into a retreat of sorts. He had to delegate a great number of tasks out of necessity. Now, only the most vital of memos find their way to the sanctum while the rest awaits his perusal in the intelligence center. We are building a whole new antenna to the complex down in the valley below where fields used to be. There are even talks of purchasing more land. I funded a lot of those projects. My military investments are bearing so much fruit that I do not know where to push all of that money. Following Melusan and Isaac's advice, I have started to save for after the war, when I will need to diversify, and the destruction brought about by the conflict will require a period of reconstruction. Constantine brings my attention back to the present by tapping lightly on the polished wood. Forgive me for the delay. I wanted to put my ideas in order. I have come to the conclusion that we need to pull resources from supporting the Union military. As you know, the Union won the Battle of Antietam yesterday. What victory? We fed information to McClellan that he had the number advantage and still he did not believe those reports. It should have been a crushing victory. Instead, Lee was allowed to withdraw in good order. I spit. Ariane. Focus, Constantine answers tiredly. I grumble about timid generals in a war where indecision leads to 6,000 dead in a single day. Yes, I reply. As you have so accurately pointed out, we can do little when the men in charge do not make use of the means we provide. This will not change in the foreseeable future. You can comfort yourself in the fact that the ammunition you and Melusan provided have improved the quality of the training of a great many soldiers. You can keep it up, but I am afraid that our information sharing must stop, and all remaining efforts be centered on the political aspect of the war. Naming generals, you mean? Among other methods, yes. As it is, we are suffering losses of spies and agents in the South, and this trend will only increase as magic becomes known and people start to assume that sorcery implies long-distance communication. We are pulling most people out. How do we keep the drones in check then? We will keep a few key people in communication roles, whose sole purpose will be to transfer relevant reports. As for hunting, we shall gather everyone and focus them on this task. The squads we trained during the Vampire War are reformed. I will delegate many of my tasks and work on magical means to track and disable the hive. In fact, I already have a few ideas. I cannot join the effort immediately. I must coordinate with the White Cabal in Washington. Indeed. I will be counting on you for that. So far, Jarek and I agree that you are best left to your own devices, as you have proven yourself to be resourceful. Please report your movements to us anyway. We will assist as we can for those projects we all support and discuss those that we do not, if the occasion arises. Ariane. Yes? Constantine's expression is intense now. He usually remains aloof, but it has not been the case recently. I am taking a risk by letting someone as young as you carry out operations that will influence our entire kind. Do not let your importance affect your judgment. Remain as part of the whole. If you fail now, you could drag all of us down with you. Do not worry, Constantine. I have not suffered at the hands of your servant to desert your cause so soon, I add with a smirk. Perhaps one day you will be in my shoes and come to the same conclusions. Perhaps I will. Be in his shoes, I mean. September 25, 1862, Washington. For 2 years, our great nation has been engaged in a civil war of unprecedented ferocity, a struggle to determine if the vision that all men are created equal, that all men deserve a fair chance at happiness holds true, or if the purity of this truth must be stained by terms and conditions. And yet, in this dark hour, God has seen fit to test our mettle with a greater challenge yet. Indeed, what you heard is true. We are beset by strange creatures the likes of which we had never seen before. The crowd before the District of Columbia City Hall sways and rumbles like an angry sea. The human horde covers every step, every inch of free space in front of the classical building. Only a thin line of guards separate them from the Doric columns of beige stone and, possibly, an avenue of retreat for the speaker. The faces are grim. Some people pray while others mutter angrily. But the orator is not done. When the conflict flared, the people of the Union rose to the challenge. Brave men flocked to the banners to defend the nation against those who sought to destroy it. So it was then, and so it is now. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Americans, it is my pleasure to introduce Reginald Chester Lewis. I watch from a rooftop, away from the populace. My dark armor adds an additional safety against being found out, not that it is much needed. Humans are apex predators in their own way. They never look up. Reggie steps forward confidently. He wears a full suit tailored to remind the attendants of an officer uniform, up to the deep blue color. The gaslights catch his handsome profile and the virile beauty that many painters would love to draw on Apollo or Theseus. This is it. This is history happening right now. I am a witness to the undoing of a century and a half of Lumières, of enlightenment, of rationality. Magic has run out of places to hide. The spheres have aligned. And now, we are stepping onto unknown grounds. Be not afraid, people of America. Be not afraid, for where you see a new darkness, so shall you see a new light. For centuries, my family and others have struggled in the shadows to fight the horrors of this world. For centuries, we have shed blood. For centuries, we have fought with faith and steel and unyielding will, and for centuries, we have kept you safe. And we will keep doing so until our Lord returns to install the kingdom of heaven. This, I swear to you. You could hear a pin drop. For what you face is not an unstoppable force, but creatures of flesh and blood that prey upon the weak and the isolated. Scavengers that we will bring to light and smite to ashes. In this time of division, in this time of strife, we have been summoned by the government of this great nation to bring our war to the light, and with God willing, we will finish it. I henceforth declare the creation of the Department of Supernatural Affairs, an entity dedicated to the handling of any creatures of phenomena that science alone cannot explain. Those of us who secretly worked to protect the land until now will be able to do so in the open, with the power and might of our institutions and industries at our back, and, I pray, your support as well. The task before us is a daunting one, but we as a nation have proven time and time again our ability to stand up to any threats, both internal and external, and to push them back from whence they came. Today is no different. We, the people, will pick up our swords once more and return to this land the peace it craves, no matter the cost, for the ideals of freedom and safety that we have built our nation on stems from the natural inclination of the hearts of good people. It cannot be quelled by terror or by complacency or by the forces of darkness. For many, we are now one. It has always been my dearest wish, and I will fight to the death for our future, on my honor. And now, I would ask you, my fellow citizen, and regardless of your creed, to join me in prayer. Drums roll and trumpets ring clear in the evening light, coming from behind the small platform where officials stand. Voices rise from the crowd, few at first, then more and more as the song picks up and the timid song turns into the tempestuous, unstoppable hymn it was created to be. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword, his truth is marching on. I set it up. I made it happen, and now I find myself buffeted by the powerful winds of divine censure. My essence frays under the roaring faith now spreading throughout the crowd. This deep belief that they belong here when others do not, and that at the end of days, only they will remain. I crawl back with a hiss under the torrent and cling to the core of who I am, one who has endured much and still lives. For one moment, I am terrified by the warning I feel on that tide. The humans outnumber us by hundreds of thousands to one. We are few, so very few. A dedicated search would end us in a matter of days. And yet, as I retreat into the darkness, the voices become dimmer and the shadows spread. And I am at peace. All those humans praying with Reginald Lewis are here because I willed it. This unity they showed will only last until the danger is past. And then, greed and ambition will return, as they always do. through the cracks in the pavements and from the top of spires of metal and glass. We will watch and direct, because we are from them yet not them, and the night is ours. Up on the dais, Reginald answers questions from the press. I move back, then away. There is still much to do. October 10, 1862, Virginian Wilderness. It occurs to me that there is a certain hypocrisy in presenting the scourge hive as the most dangerous threat to mankind while simultaneously killing some of those who oppose it. But I am a vampire. Calculated, bloody measures are sort of our thing. And so I line the rifle and shoot the head off that Confederate politician. He falls dramatically. The officer by his side mechanically wipes the blood off his shoulders and contemplates a piece of brain stuck to his white glove for an amusing half a second. Then the entire bivouac explodes in motion. To arms. Men jump from around campfires, grasping for sabers and pistols, widened eyes searching the forest edge. When no more gunshots ring, the officer whistles and rushes for his horse. I see his graying mutton chops quivering with shame and anger. The small cavalry squadron gathers around him. You may engage, I tell John. My faithful minion directs his new nightmare, Gorm, with barely a move. The proud beast snorts and stomps out of the darkness, one step at a time. I believe that, besides Jarek's mount, Gorm has to be the largest and most monstrous nightmare I have ever seen. The different temperament truly matches John's own. And I have come to believe that we are not so much assigned nightmares and they are assigned vampires. While Metis is a mix of the playful and aggressive, Gorm is half silent presence, and half unstoppable force. And this is what he demonstrates now. Gorm is the only nightmare I know of that not just tolerates, but enjoys being covered in armor. Only his crimson eyes and a hint of black hair can be seen under the enchanted steel barding. The men pale at the sight of the duo, a black knight from some grim fairy tale, the kind that ends with sliced toes. John wears full plate with helm, a shield, and a cavalry lance. Shit. It's one of them, a sergeant whispers. I love this moment when mundane mortals realize that they have stepped out of their domain and into our own. To their credit, they close ranks around their leader. Gentlemen, blades drawn. Charge. For Virginia. They roar, a defiant sound that reverberates across the clearing. The sound trembles under their hooves. John salutes and rides to meet them. For the lady. His voice is almost devoid of emotion. Just as when he was human, his reality remains simple. I ordered it, and so it must be done. The two forces race to each other, one yelling, the other silent, an excellent metaphor of our situation. If things were fair, there would be hundreds of soldiers to face him. They would shoot relentlessly to take him down. They would sacrifice their own to chip at the courtier's armor, then at his prodigious endurance. Little by little, they would harry him until, eventually, the lion would fall to the pack of hounds. They would win through numbers and this peculiar altruistic behavior that allows humans to die fighting in the name of a cause. If things were fair. But we do not do fair. The two sides collide. The shock is tremendous, and men and mounts collapse in great heaps of struggling limbs. John is through no worse for it. Two bodies dangle from his spear. He turns Gorm around and, slowly, almost respectfully, allows the dead to slide to the ground. Let's go greet them, I tell Urchin. He nods in his light leather and mail, and we ride out to meet our victims. I wear my armor sans face mask. Urchin rides his own new nightmare, Shale, a lithe and agile creature. I designed Urchin's armor to be form-fitting and host the many knives and daggers he uses in combat. A cowl masks his angular traits, but there is no mistaking our identity. The officer survived the impact, and he and the others are helping their comrades extricate themselves from the heap. A few horses and men have broken legs. The men may recover. They gather in a small circle, weapons drawn and aiming outward. Normally, I would have to use charm or a few tricks to make them feel fear. Not those men. They know of what we are. I do not believe that I will ever get used to it. The officer takes a step forward and lifts his chin. I think that it takes a certain amount of bravado to serve in the cavalry, for I have never seen a meek officer. A bit of foolishness as well. No games, foul monster. Face us in battle, and you will not find us wanting. he exclaims, addressing, of course, Urchin. I mean, I have the prettiest armor by far. But can they envision warriors led by a woman? No. And Urchin is a military leader? Come on. The light must be too poor despite the lanterns and fire. I fear that you are mistaken, sir, Urchin politely allows. You are dealing with me, I say, and move Metis a few steps forward. We will not surrender our souls, demon. You will have to take us to the last, he says, but I can feel the hesitation hidden behind the veil of temerity. It does not take Sinayat to know what scares him. Like a lot of people at the front, he genuinely cares about the lives of the people around him. To die is one thing, a pointless last stand is another. You could do that. Or you could take your men and carry a message back to your superiors. Surprise. Hope. Distrust. We were warned about your kind. And what kind would it be? The man hesitates. Vampires. Indeed. Let me guess, I add in a mocking voice, we steal souls for lunch and bathe in the blood of puppies and whatnot? What else? The men exchange glances, brains frozen by the surreal situation, perhaps. You summon new members in massive orgies? We do? I exclaim, Urchin, how come I was never invited to such fascinating events? I do not know, mistress. Perhaps you should kidnap more babies? Indeed. As for you, officer, the situation is a tiny bit more complex than what you were led to believe. We will not hold it against you. You may leave and carry the message I mentioned. What about the dead? What about them? I ask, frowning. May we take them with us? Yes, yes, I waved dismissively. I told you that we have no interest in souls. You can pack up and leave. We have more business to attend to. The men step down. It looks like many of them would die fighting if the order was given, but the possibility of a retreat still calls to the deeper part of their survival instincts. And that message? The officer asks. The message is simple. We know what you know. We see what you do. Work with our foes and be considered one of them. We will be in touch. Is that all? I believe in clarity. You may leave now. Urchin and John lead their mounts by my side. Our little victims scurry back to their encampment to pack it up. 2 maimed horses are shot out of mercy. The bodies of the fallen are recovered while the wounded are placed on stretchers. It takes 15 minutes for them to disappear. Only the campfires remain. Now, we wait for our visitors. A group of men on foot cross the woods, somewhere west of our position. They move through the undergrowth with the light steps of accomplished foresters. An old man, completely bald with a long, flowing white beard, is the first to appear. He and the few men behind him wear a leather uniform in brown hues, with a visible crucifix and a plethora of weapons hanging here and there in so many holsters. Some of those look positively ancient. He raises a fist and the men by his side kneel. It's useless, Gabrielite. I can hear your heartbeat from here, I lazily say. The man stands up. I taste the delicate touch of terror and grief, the harbingers of the hunt. By my side, John rolls his massive shoulders and the plates click and shift to accommodate the gesture. Double file. Check your weapons, the man orders in a low voice. 24 Gabrielites form a battle line with commendable speed. Hands find ancient pistols and rusty revolvers awkwardly inscribed with crosses. There was a time when I would not have attacked them for all the gold in the Rosenthal coffers. This time has long passed. The force arrayed against me are relics of a bygone era. 60 years ago, hundreds of soldiers of God had assailed the vampire fortress where I changed. Now, only fragments of squads remain. We are responsible. We went after the money. In Europe, vampire hunters depend on ancient orders and the Vatican. My European kin cannot face those odds. Here, the religious communities are fragmented and split by a profusion of creeds and the occasional schism. We have uprooted every major source of funding, destroyed every training center we could get our hands on. We struck their ability to recruit and arm, and it has worked. Those arrayed against us now are old men and a few of their grown-up children. They wear ratty armors and wield obsolete or poorly made weapons. I see a lot of gray hair. Scars adorn their faces. There is even a man missing an entire arm, though he still wields a blunderbuss as if it did not matter. As for me, I have 2 warriors with me and I am well equipped with spells and guns. The power of faith does not block bullets. Neither do their armors. There will be no battles here. The old man speaks loudly in the line with a roaring voice that only breaks on occasion. Gentlemen, it has been an honor. It might be that we face I use a spell to make my voice louder. Why do you Gabrielites have to be so dramatic? Face, our death, but I have seen less pretentious thespians after the premiere of Lucia di Lammermoor. But we will face it as soldiers of God. By the way, a thespian is an actor or actress, in case you were wondering. Who go to our end without fear and without. Lucia di Lammermoor is an opera by Donizetti. Will you shut up, woman? I'm trying to speak here. The man finally bellows, out of patience. Urchin snickers. You could make your stupid last stand, or you could enter into a truce to hunt the scourge hive. A more urgent priority, don't you think? The man stops. A few of the soldiers mutter about not listening to me. You were going to enter an agreement with the Confederate government, seeing that our side was already working with the Union. We cannot allow this to happen. But if you wish to die heroically against drones, we can send you in the right direction. I can even provide you with the rations to go there. You mean, the ghouls? Someone asks. We call them drones, but if you are referring to horrid pale creatures that reproduce from human corpses, then we are talking about the same foe. What do you devils care about that anyway? Oh, another bellows. They taste bad, I reply. No need to sound reasonable with those folks. They would not believe me. I hear dissent in the ranks now. Gabrielites do not discuss with vampires, and vampires do not discuss with Gabrielites. Except for French elements, the 2 sides usually kill each other on contact. We have no reason to believe you. We will not work with monsters, ever. Not even for those you left behind. Half of the Gabrielites freeze where they are. Those who left their relatives behind, I suppose. I know that you brought everyone together for that last attempt at relevance, including your families. They are currently going away, but they are quite slow and the night is still young. Damn it, I should have known that it was a shit idea to meet at night. We should never have agreed to this. A man with a long dark beard laments. A bit late for regrets, I reply, but my offer still stands. A truce, while the drones threaten mankind. After that, we can go back to ruling from the shadows and you can return to fucking each other's cousins in a desperate attempt to increase your numbers. How about it? Angry mutters fuse between the men. A few of the older ones spread hatred and bile, while others, especially the youths, cast glances back and wonder what their lives could be if they lasted the night. What truce? We cannot trust demons. No compromise, George, you swore the oath like we did. I don't want to die for nothing, and so on. Eventually, the leader raises his voice again. Are you serious? I never joke about deals, Georg, I answer amicably. The life of your men and family, locations of hordes sent by telegram to your contact Luther Mason in Richmond, in exchange for a truce until the danger is past. I am even willing to share food and ammunition. No guns though. You lots do not deserve to wield my beauties. Situation must be worse than we thought, the black-bearded man mumbles. No, George. Do not do this, another begs. I simply wait. Go then, coward. Go, oathbreaker. See how real men live and die, another old man utters through gritted teeth. It was the signal that they were waiting for. The group splits. Half of the men, the old guard, walks forward. The other stays back. A young man tries to join the fighter, but one of his relatives socks him, pushing him to his knees. The men walk in the clearing to face us. No matter how much charm I am willing to use, or how many blackmail levers I have, there will always be men like these. They cannot be threatened. They cannot be bought. They cannot be persuaded or negotiated with. They are the unyielding rock upon which entire factions build themselves. The important thing, when dealing with them, is to recognize them for what they are. And kill them. Do your war, we move. I use spells and guns. Urchin displays the strange dance that we have been working on, all deception and knives thrown from unexpected angles. All the blades that find their mark soon reappear back into the hands of their owner. As for John, he throws his spear through the leader. There was no fight. 13 men are dead. I do not drink from them. This was a more elegant sort of hunt. And a good night to you, gentlemen, I finish. We climb back on the saddles we had left to attack, turn around, and leave in a cloud of darkness. Tobe continued.